What up? It's your boy Wall Street, and I'm back. Thank you very much for tuning in. And today, we're talking about Ace Bailey. Airious, aka Ace Bailey, is a 2025 NBA draft prospect who, for the majority of the past season, was regarded as the number 3 overall pick, without doubt. There was no way he was sliding outside the top 3. And as of recently, now that we're getting close to the draft is about 4 days away at this point, he's starting to slide for a variety of reasons, right? And this started building earlier in May with the draft combine and has recently just kind of snowballed into a situation where now he might find himself falling outside of the top 10. A lot of people have been saying he's going to fall out of the top 10. I don't think it's going to happen, just because based on the issues that we'll discuss in this video today, I don't think it warrants a team that's sitting at, call it 6, 7, or 8 to pass on him, right? So let's get into it, and then I'll kind of describe my thoughts here. But Ace Bailey is previously was regarded as a 6'10" shooting guard / small forward, but when he went to the draft combine, he measured at 6'7.5". Right, so this had a lot of people up in arms. I don't think this is that big of a deal, personally. I mean, everyone has seen the guy play. Just because he's not actually 6'10" like it says doesn't make it any different, right? And frankly, the kid's 18. Like, he's not going to turn 19 until August. There's a very high likelihood that he continues to grow after he gets drafted, right? There's plenty of dudes in the league who have been drafted when they were 18 or 19, and they keep growing until they're like 22 or 23. It's not the end of the world, and even if he doesn't grow another inch or another centimeter, it's still, the dude's still like 6'8", right? And that's without shoes. He puts shoes on, he's like 6'9", 6'9.5". So I'm not too worried about this, but this started a negative effect on his draft stock, right? So that was back early in the combine. The team interviews that he apparently did at the combine also were not great, and I think he refused several of the interviews as well. And then this leads into recently the story that came out about him declining to even work out for the Philadelphia 76ers, who have the 3rd overall pick. And Paul George is a guy, he's on the Sixers, obviously, and like, he's been a guy that's been a huge proponent for Ace Bailey, and has said Ace Bailey's, one of, if not the most intriguing draft prospects in this draft. He's been super high on Ace Bailey. I think Ace and his camp are probably looking at the Sixers saying, like, if we get picked here, like, what really are we going to be able to do in the first couple of years? Because you have Paul George, you have Jared McCain, you have Tyrese Maxey, you have Joel Embiid. It seems like there's not going to be a lot of room for Ace Bailey to really play. And then do you wind up, if he does go to Philly, do you wind up having Ace Bailey in a Reed Shepherd type of situation where, Reed Shepherd, the 3rd overall pick to Houston in this past year's draft, winded up being in and out of the G League, barely playing, and a lot of people were saying, oh, this dude's a bust, he's not going to be good, whatever. I personally still think Reed Shepherd is going to be a very good player. I think there's just way too much talent on the Rockets, which is not a bad thing, but it's just, he can't get minutes because he's not the best player at his position on that team yet, and that's fair, right? That's how teams should operate. But I think that's kind of what Ace Bailey and his camp are seeing with the Sixers, and maybe they're just intending to kind of, quote unquote, really blow that interview or blow that workout so that they fall back, right? You've heard about this before. Charles Barkley has a great story about, he tried to put on a lot of weight before he got drafted because he didn't want to get drafted to the Sixers because they couldn't pay him enough money, whatever. It's a common thing where teams and players alike will try and, kind of forge the relationship in a way where, the team's passed on the player, or the player's like, please do not pick me, whatever you do not pick me, right? So that's not that crazy to me. But a lot of people are also saying now that with these other factors included, they're like, oh, well, the big reason that people wanted to pick him was because he's 6'10", and like Kevin Durant, he could just shoot over everybody because he's basically a shooting guard, and the dude can still shoot over a lot of people. If you play him at the 2 slot, right, and he's being guarded by smaller guards, like that, he's still gonna be able to shoot over a lot of people in the NBA, right? But If not, he's just going to have to adjust his game. And the fact that he's gotten this far already, I think he has the ability to improve on his game and, really adapt to the NBA. It might take a little while, but I think he'll adapt and he'll be a solid player once he gets there. People are also making concerns or bringing up concerns about his ball handling and finishing ability. He sticks a lot to the mid-range. He's a decent three-point shooter, but he's not the best three-point shooter, shoots in the mid 30%. And people are saying that he's not good defensively. I don't think he's bad defensively. I mean, he averaged over a steal and a block per game at Rutgers this past season. Rutgers' record was not great, 15-17 overall. They did not make the NCAA tournament. But I think it goes a long way to say, like, this dude is averaging over a block and a steal a game. Like, that is good defensive production. Even if it's not good on-ball perimeter defense, he's clearly creating stops at some point, right? Getting a steal or a block is a stop. That is, there's no clearer way to get a stop than by deflecting the ball and getting it back, right? And sometimes when you block a shot, you don't get it back, but you get my point, right? He's making defensive plays. But so let's look at this holistically, right? So he's, unwilling to work out with the Sixers. I think what's happening here is he wants to go to a team where there's not as much talent. It's a rebuilding situation, and he has a lot more ability and likelihood to play early on in his career, right? So I think that, to me, is like, let's figure out how to get outside the top three, and let's figure out how we can go 4, 5, or 6, or even 7, right? He is losing some money, but at the end of the day, like, this kid's going to come into millions of dollars just by being drafted in general. So I don't think that's at the forefront of his mind. I think he's worried about his career turning out the way he wants it to turn out. And I think him and his camp are probably like, okay, like, if we can go to a team that is, like the Utah Jazz or the Washington Wizards or the New Orleans Pelicans or even the Brooklyn Nets, like, he can put up better numbers. He'll probably get a bigger contract for his second contract if he goes to one of those teams. I think that's probably how they're looking at it, right? So I don't really have an opinion on the approach one way or another, but I don't think this is something that is coming without design. I think this is something that they intended to do based on the lottery results. And, it can hurt him. It can help him. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But people saying that he's going to slip out of the top 10, I don't think that's going to happen, right? Because let's look at this. You have Dallas at 1. They're taking Cooper Flagg. You got San Antonio at 2. They're probably taking Dylan Harper, or they're trading the pick to someone else who will then take Dylan Harper. You have Philly at 3, who's probably not taking Ace Bailey anymore. So that means they're probably taking VJ Edgecombe or Trey Johnson or Con Kneppel. I would probably lean more towards VJ Edgecombe and then maybe Trey Johnson, and then Con Kneppel's like a far back third option for them at number 3. And then I think 4, you have, one of the guys that doesn't get picked by the Sixers. And then I think 5 or 6, if Ace Bailey's on the board, I don't think he's going past 6, right? I think he can go at 5 to the Jazz. I think he'd be happy with that. I think if he goes 6 to the Wizards, he'd be happy with that. Me as a Wizards fan, I'd be happy with that as well. Being a fan of the Wizards is really tough. And when they fell in the draft lottery, I was like, oh man, like, why? In the one draft where I'm like, we could have gotten Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper, we slide out of the top 3. And this could be the opportunity to snag a top 3 talent without having a top 3 pick, right? So I think that idea is popping up in the minds of all of these teams in like the 5 to 7 range. So Utah, Washington, New Orleans, all of them I think are thinking the same thing. That's like, if we can snag a top 3 talent in this draft, even though we slid back several slots from the lottery, that might be what we do. They might be willing to ignore the concerns that people are bringing up and, the attitude concerns that people are bringing up and just be like, hey, this guy could be an all-star talent. We can't pass on this. And I think that's a valid approach. It's hard to blame a team for doing that. You know, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's similar to the Shadur Sanders situation where Shadur was, supposed to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. He slid all the way to like the 4th or 5th round or something like that. And I mean, Ace Bailey's not sliding to the 2nd round, right? The NBA is very different than the NFL, where if you can play, you can play. NFL is a lot more position specific to teams, so it's a little different, right? In the NBA, it's like you should take the best talent available, regardless of what position it is. I truly do believe that. And if Ace Bailey's on the board at 5, 6, or 7, I think he's going to be the best talent available, and I would be surprised if he does not get taken at one of those slots. I mean, it's possible Charlotte takes him at 4, but I think Charlotte is also kind of in the same boat where it's like, I don't know if we want to take this dude number 4, especially if he has attitude concerns. I think Charlotte's really trying to build up a culture, and they've gotten a reputation of immaturity. I don't know if Ace Bailey's the right fit there. They also have Brandon Miller, who's somewhat of a similar player. So I don't know if that makes sense for them. But I think Utah, Washington, New Orleans, that all makes sense for Ace Bailey. I think he's going to get picked in the top 7, maybe top 8, maybe he slides to Brooklyn, but I think this dude going past the top 10 is not going to happen. I would be very shocked if that happened, right? But we've seen it happen before. Cam Whitmore was supposed to go 4th overall a couple years back, and he slid all the way to 20. So, but that was a value pick at 20, right? Cam Whitmore is a great player. He just doesn't get a lot of play because he's on the Rockets, and like I said before, they have way too much talent on that team. Not a bad thing, but know what it is. So, another thing though that I want to mention real quick is that a lot of people are saying Ace Bailey's really arrogant, just by the answers he's given, right? But I know there was like one interview or a quick snippet that I heard where someone was asking Ace Bailey what are, his 2 biggest strengths or 2 of his strengths, and then what's one weakness. And he basically told him, I have way more than 2 strengths and I have no weaknesses. That was basically what he told him, right? Which some people are saying, oh, that's arrogant. He's not even in the NBA yet. But like, don't you want a guy that thinks he's the best player in the room every time he walks into the room? Like, that's what I don't understand anymore. If this was 10 years ago, I think people would have loved that answer. I think now people are just hyper-analyzing it because of social media and stuff, and it's not working out. But, hey, if Ace Bailey falls to number 6 and the Wizards pick him up, I think I'll be a pretty happy camper about that. So it is what it is. But let me know what you guys think about Ace Bailey. Where do you think he's going to go in the draft? What do you think about all of this news that's been coming out about him? Do you think he's still a valuable guy to pick in the top 10? Or do you think he's going to have a tough NBA career because of his, attitude concerns and, the way he has kind of gone about this process? I want to know your thoughts. So please leave some comments down below, and I'm going to check you guys later, man. Stay up, stay blessed, stay humble, stay safe, handle business, stand on business. Peace out.